Saeed, and I welcome you to this webinar on leading with agility and resilience. It's a pleasure having you on this call, and I look forward to spending this hour with you discussing an interesting topic that has become quite important for many companies, especially those that want to survive in today's turbulent and ever-moving market. So I want to thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'm holding this webinar in Dubai, and beautiful city of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and it's a bit hot these days. We're hitting the 43, 44 degrees, but that's expected around this time of year. So I hope it is cooler where you are. And if you happen to be in this place, also stay cool, drink lots of water and liquid. So welcome. As I mentioned, this webinar is about leading with agility and resilience. We're going to be spending some time with each other to cover this topic. And but first, normally what I would like to do is I would like to talk to you a little bit about the company that I work for, and that is Meirc Training and Consulting. And it's not because I work for Meirc. Meirc is a wonderful company, young and old, and the reason I say this, it's still young at heart, but we have been around for 61 years. And 61 years in this region is, I would say, a wonderful accomplishment. And I believe this is something very special about Meirc, the founders of Meirc, and the people who are managing it right now. And we definitely look forward to seeing you in our public or in-house courses, and that will give us an opportunity to really impress you more. Because Meirc has left its mark and still leaves its mark on many fronts. So let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about Meirc. I don't want to take too much of the time on introducing the company. Do that, by the way. If I ask you for a favor, go to the website and www.meirc, M-E-I-R-C, M as in Mary, I as in ice cream, M-E-I, M as in Mary, E as in elephant, I as in ice cream, R as in rabbit, and C as in cloud.com, meirc.com. And the name is on the slide there in case I messed it up for you. .com. It will just check our website. It's a very nice website, easy to use, easy to navigate. And also we have chatting. If you want to chat with some of our consultants, it gives you a chance to find out what is going on in the world of training and consulting and development. One word that I like to always start: always develop yourself. Always develop yourself. Before I launch into the slides, I'll tell you a story. My son-in-law sent me an interesting article, and in it he's saying how knowledge is so important today. And knowledge, of course, we know it has been around for a millennia. But he's telling me that the way that we acquire knowledge has changed. In the past, we used to acquire, learn, work, and retire, right? I mean, come to think of it, we used to learn, we go to school and university, we work for 20, 30, 50 years, and then we retire. But the thing about it is that today, because of this agility and resilience and all of these changes, even that has changed. So now there's a new concept on the market. It is learn, work, and then learn, and then work, and then learn, and then work. And the retirement is kind of disappearing because, we have to keep learning. So if I ask you, and if I stress something on you today, is don't take your knowledge for granted. Always develop yourself, please. This is a must for you today. And I hope that we contribute to that. And let's start with this webinar. So right now, a little bit about the company. As I said, I'm not going to spend too much time, even though, believe me, I can speak for days about this wonderful company. Meirc was founded in 1958. We covered that already. We are currently headquartered in Dubai, but we are also headquartered in Saudi Arabia, wonderful Saudi. Our offices are in Jeddah, but we do cover all of Saudi. We also are based in Abu Dhabi, another wonderful city. And of course, Beirut, that's where we started, another great place. So we are based in these four cities. Probably in the future, we will consider other places. We cover lots of topics, as you can see here, English and Arabic both. We operate across the Middle East. I just came back from Saudi. We met with some wonderful customers over there, and we held some programs for them. And then in 2014, we decided to go for Plus Training. We established Plus Training as a division of Sun, a division of Meirc, and it is a wonderful young company focused on function-oriented, industry-specific training, and the programs are led by leading subject matter experts, practitioners in the field. I mean, I'm a practitioner, but I'm a full-time employee with Meirc. But the other ones, we contract them. But both of them, I assure you, the highest quality possible. Let me tell you a little bit about what we stand for. Our values are the name of Meirc, or the letters in Meirc. So you can see mastery, excellence, innovation, reliability, and client centricity. And definitely the client centricity is what drives us. We are always focused on our clients. We focus on them quite a bit. We listen to them. And I think that's the secret formula here, is that we have been listening to the customers, trying to understand what they want. And based on their needs, we have been evolving. So if you have a business, and if you want to stay in the market, always listen to your customers. Always listen to your customers. And then our vision is to be your most trusted partner in developing excellence for generations to come. And then, of course, your development is our passion. Our mission is very simple. Earn the trust and confidence of our clients, always innovate. And then, of course, the last one is to be a wonderful place for people to work at. So now, moving on to the very quickly, this is the different areas we cover. So as you can see, it's very rich. We have accounting and finance at the top. We also have leadership and management. This particular segment, or this particular webinar, when we talk about leading with agility and resilience, it falls into the leadership and management area. And so this is a topic that leaders deal with a lot, because they want to make sure that their organizations are able to cope with the changes in the market. And so it is one of their key prerogatives is to build an agile and resilient organization. How can you be agile so that you can move fast, and resilient that you can withstand the different changes in the market, from competition to whatever it is. And then, of course, we have the project management, finance. So very rich portfolio. As I said, our website will explain it a lot better. A little bit about myself. So who is Jamal Saeed? I basically, also, I don't want to take a lot of our time here. We have some important things to talk about, but basically I have a bachelor in electrical engineering and an MBA, Master's in Business Administration, trying to get my DBA, believe it or not. So this proves to the point that there's no retirement. I have to continue learning, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. I worked for Pepsi and Sun and Cisco, wonderful companies. I learned a lot from them, and I managed to develop many aspects that helps me to do my job today. And then at Meirc, I basically develop training courses from A to Z with the help of some wonderful colleagues here. And I also cover topics like leadership and management, strategy and planning, sales and marketing. But I also do dip into the people management and development, communication, negotiation skills. So if you have any further questions, do send them across. I will share with you my email that were on the last slide, and I'd love to hear from you. And so don't hesitate. So here we go. Now, that being said, what are the objectives of the webinars? Basically, I will try to cover these things in a way that it is of value to you. Of course, it goes without saying that this is a webinar. It's 1 hour. Many of this is could be a course by itself, and we cover the course over over a period of 5 days. So I'm taking just the snippets of this course and sharing it with you, with the hope that we see you. Otherwise, do develop yourself in these areas, because it's an important topic. So first of all, we like to explain the importance of leading agile organization, how to anticipate and adapt change. Goal number 3, or objective number 3, is to lead and develop a rapid response mechanism to an ever-changing environmental place, or environmental changes. And then, of course, how to establish compelling agile communication strategies, and then at the end, we like to identify some strategies to build and enhance agility and resilience. With that being said, I'd just like to remind you that whenever you join our courses, we also provide you with some interesting additional material. So let's say that you join our course, we also give you access to free online blended learning. So you can continue your education, and this way you can develop ongoing, and you can access this material from anywhere. And this is what I like. Anytime, anywhere, you can access this material. So this is very, very helpful. I want to welcome Bushra, and I want to welcome Gilio. I want to welcome Ridi, Silver as well, and of course Taysir. Taysir, it's always a pleasure to see you on our webinars, so thank you for being with us. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and try to define agility and resilience. But one of the key things we do in our webinars is that we try to ask you questions. So please take a moment to answer these questions. So let's see if you are getting the idea, because it's important that you take an understanding, gain an understanding, and that's one of the key objectives. So here comes question number one for you. I'm going to ask you the following questions, okay? And then I'm going to open a survey to give you a chance to respond to it. Agility is the ability to successfully cope with changes in the environment or situation. True or false? So here comes the survey for you, and this is question number one. Please go ahead and answer. See if you can answer that one. Okay. All right. So let's see if how many people are going to answer this question. All right. So we have already 3 answering in, jumping in. That's great. Well done. Okay. Let's see if I'm going to give everybody a chance to make sure that everybody's answering here. And all right. So the answer is agility is the ability to successfully cope with changes in the environment. Okay. And all of you have mentioned, those who have answered at least, they said true. So let me end the voting. We have one more. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. So just for the sake of time, and I apologize if I stop the voting, let me end the vote first of all. I'm going to show you the results. I'm very proud of you, first of all. I think you guys nailed it. This is very good. So 6 out of 8, you answered yes. And this is fantastic. So good for you. Good for you. And that's true. Come to think of it, is how do you cope? You know, that's the key word here in the statement. How do you cope? Now I'm going to stop sharing this one. I'm going to go back to my slide. I'm going to close this one over here, and here we go. So well done, well done. Let's go into the what is the media saying. So notice what people are saying, what appears in the newspaper, and as you can see here, this is very important what's happening today in the market. You know, for example, in the New York Times, they say number one thing is we look for is general cognitive ability. And it's not IQ. Cognitive ability is, are you able to manage yourself? Are you able to cope with your emotions? Are you able to cope with the information, the amount of information we have? Look at Bloomberg. Look at Bloomberg, what they're saying, learning agility equals leadership success. You know, these things are critical today. Also look at that one. Fast company, developing leaders and high potential talent has become a strategic necessity. So why are you stopping from learning? Keep learning. Your value goes up in the market, and you can deliver more to the company that you're working for. You deliver more value. So you are valuable. First of all, don't let anybody tell you that you are of no value. You have great value. The fact that you have a wonderful mechanism between your ears, I'm talking about your brain, okay? You can make a difference. You can make a difference. So always take care of yourself and of your knowledge and your development. And look at this one, Forbes, learn, unlearn, and relearn. Remember what I told you at the beginning? Remember what I told you about the different changes is that you learn, we work, and then we retire. This is the same thing here. We are learning, unlearning. Some of the old things we used to do, we don't use them anymore. So now I have to relearn new things. And this is what's happening. So everybody acknowledge the fact that Agility is not how we only cope with things, but also how we cope with our knowledge. So it is an universal concept that we have to acquire, and we have to make it part of our habit today. Moving on to the next slide. Now, here comes the interesting part. What is the essence of agility? And why is agility needed? So come to think of it, look at this. Look at this wonderful slide here. We need, agility, is because we live in a dynamic environment. Complexity is becoming part of our daily life, and sometimes it's accompanied by chaos. Sometimes our future is not as, we're not confident about the future as we used to be. It's not as clear as we used to have it. um, you know, Predictability is not as it used to be, and of course, things are changing quite a bit every year, every 2 years. Major things are changing, and on the technology side, for those of you who are working in technology, um, things are changing quite fast on the technology side. And then, of course, unexpected events, unfamiliar situations, even the tasks that you do every day, even your tasks are changing. So, agility is coping with all of these things. And that is why we talk about this topic. And we want you to understand how to develop the necessary means to become agile and, of course, resilient. So, what needs to be agile? Well, organizations need to think differently, and they have to think differently about the systems they have, about the people they have, about the processes they have, about the plans. Imagine the plans, even the strategic plans that they have to become agile and consider agility and resilience as an important part of the whole formula of success. Of course, your architecture, and architecture can be your organizational architecture. How is your organization structured? The tools that you use, your culture, your policies. So as you can see, you have to have a very wide scope of things, a solid understanding of how agility is needed across different things. So that takes us to the fact that when we, when you're agile, it requires a couple of things. So first of all, look at this. It recognizes a relevant change in the environment. So for you to be agile, you say, you know what, that environment I'm in is changing. That's one. I'm acknowledging the change in the environment. But that's not enough. That is only half of the story. The other part is responding to it. And response to it has to be responded to appropriately. So you have to have the proper and appropriate response to this. And this is where the beautiful thing is that first of all, you acknowledge that there's a change, but on the other side is how do I respond to it? And this is very, very critical. So what does it mean then? Let's look at the remainder of the slide. Being agile includes one or more of the following. Are you adaptable? Are you flexible? Are you responsive? You see, when something happens, a change happens in your organization, how responsive are you to that? Because if you respond very late, I'm sorry, it's too late for you to cope with the change, and maybe competition will cause more damage to your business. But if you respond very fast, this means that you are able to cope with the change and you can beat competition at their own game. And this is something very important. The resilience, we're going to be defining resilience in a minute. Robustness, reflexiveness. In many ways, these things, they kind of support each other. And this is very, very critical that you see this, commonality between the different terms. Now, that being said, I move on to the, complexity and agility. So increased complexity translates to greater difficulty in prediction and greater residual uncertainty. Because, complexity is on the rise, we are not able to predict as we did before, and this means that uncertainty is becoming more common. This means that, in light of this, and notice how beautiful this statement is, because we're uncertain, risk is going up. You see this? Look at this one here, right? Look at this. This is very beautiful. Because uncertainty is there, the risk is on the rise. So this means that we have to respond to risk somehow. And I think that agility is one way to respond to this risk. Of course, you have to know your business, you have to do the analysis, you have to identify the risks, but how you cope with these risks and how you respond to them is very important. So this means that you need to have agile command and control arrangements. You have to have agile people, organizations, systems, acquisition processes. So Agility has to become part of everything that you do. All right. Now, that being said, we move on to the next slide. So in the next slide, we look at the 21st century, security challenges characterized by huge amounts of uncertainty and risk, and that is where I quizzed you. That's where I tested you. I told you, what is agility? And this is the definition of agility. There it is. Agility is the ability to successfully cope with changes in the environment. And for example, loss of capability, could hamper your ability to be agile. Changes in objectives, you have to make sure that your objectives are not static. They are going to change. Changes in coalition, one day you have partners, the second day your partners have disappeared. Why? Because the environmental change are forcing changes in the coalitions that you have. And this means that you have to maintain a certain acceptable level of performance, effectiveness, and efficiency, which requires timely recognition, appropriate response, and timely response. This is a wonderful slide. So if I want you to remember something, keep that in mind. How things are changing. What do we need to maintain an acceptable level of agility, which is performance, effectiveness, and efficiency? And then, of course, what does you mean? What do you need to do? So, and each one of these things can be measured, by the way. How soon can I recognize something? So this is a measure. How soon do I respond? That's a measure. All of these things are important measures in our life. Now, here's a very interesting concept now. Because the business landscape is changing on the global scale, organizations are becoming flatter and leaner, technology is moving at very, very fast, innovation, you name it, you got it. Innovation is becoming a daily thing almost. Mergers and acquisitions, one of the key things that could be happening in your company right now as we speak is that mergers and acquisitions could be are accelerating the pace of the need for agility, because many companies, in order to cope with the changes in the market, they need to be agile. That agility could be answered by merging with other companies. So let's say I'm a traditional company, I'm a retail company, but I don't have the agility of online. So I acquire an online business. Did you see how sometimes the need to be agile, instead of building things from zero, it forces us to buy something else. So that's something important. Keep that in mind. And of course, market disruptions. So of course, change is happening across the board. But the next slide is very important, because this is what we call a concept called the VUCA concept. And this VUCA concept is something that was termed by some of the military institutions around the world, especially in the US. So in the United States, they knew that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity is on the rise. So they came up with something called VUCA. Okay, and this is very interesting. So, and we're living it not only from a military point of view. It's, as a matter of fact, we're living it much more from a business point of view. And what I mean by business, is the following: whether you are in the oil and gas sector, whether you are in the manufacturing sector, whether you are in the education sector, it doesn't matter. Volatility is there, uncertainty is there, complexity is there, and ambiguity is there. And understanding this concept of VUCA will help you understand how growth is happening in the emerging market, how innovation is becoming in the heart as a central point or central objective of many companies, why mergers and acquisitions are on the rise. Customer loyalty is becoming more and more important. And remember what I said at the beginning when I introduced Meirc, is that client centricity is something very important for us. You have to listen to your customer. And then, of course, consolidation and restructuring. This means that you have to keep consolidating and restructure your organization in many ways. Now, this takes us to the following. If you want to compete in a VUCA world, you have to have three key pillars: talent, and that's you on the phone, in this webinar. This is you. You are important talent to many organizations. The culture that you live in. Does your culture support innovation? Does it support a quick and fast response to things? Are you agile? So these three things are extremely important to live in a world where volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and all of these things are happening. So remember, the VUCA concept is very, very important for us. With that in mind, let's move on to the next slide. So learning agility is the ability and willingness to learn from experience, subsequently apply that learning to perform successfully under new or first time conditions. Now, if you are looking at agility, you have to accelerate the learning agility. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you are a company that is moving into developing some new applications in a new using different methodologies, different tools. Now, if you keep using the old tools are becoming antiquated. Some of them have security gaps, and all of these things are taking place. So my advice to you is, how do you learn? How agile are you? Can help you tremendously when it comes to, advocating a workplace that is very agile and able to deal with all the complexity in the workplace. So that is why learning agility is critical today. So if you tell me, Jamal, how do I deal with uncertainty? I say, try to learn more. Try to understand what's going on. If you tell me, Jamal, it's becoming complex, I said, find a way to deal with the complexity and the risk that is out there. Always stay on top of things. So learning agility is a critical aspect of things. And this is where we look at these 5 areas of agility. In order to be to push for learning agility, we look at the following factors. First of all, self-awareness. Are you aware of what you have? Are you aware of your skills? Are you aware of your competencies? Because if you're not aware, you could be developing things that could be antiquated or old. So it's very important that you are aware of what your weaknesses and your strengths. The second thing is, are you mentally agile? This means that are you able to absorb new things? Because sometimes people get hitched on something and they stick with it. No, you cannot stick to something as much as we used to do before, because your experience might mean something today, but in the future it may not be of much value because things are moving very fast. People agility. Can you deal with people from different angles, different cultures, different background? You see how agility important today. That's why teamwork and collaboration is becoming extremely important. And of course, the fourth factor is change agility. Are you adaptable? Can you cope with things? Because, I was in Saudi this week. I just came back last night, and I was giving a course on change. And it tells you that you have to deal with change in a positive fashion. And if you're not able to cope with change, it could be an issue. So it's very important that the fourth factor, change agility, you have to understand it. And then, of course, results agility. So if you have self-awareness, mental agility, people agility, and change agility, you end up with results that are agile. This means that there are results that reflect your agile organization. And as I said, everything is measurable today. Now, with that in mind, we move on to a bit of we talk about enterprise agility. So when you have learning agility as your foundation, enterprise agility becomes easier, because you're attracting the talent that can take on agility. And this is very, very critical. So enterprise agility cannot exist without learning agility. So this is why enterprise agility depends on learning agility. This means that how learning agile is my organization. Do they support my learning? Do they push me to develop? Do they ask me to develop new skills? How agile does my organization need to be given the business strategy we are pursuing? So is your business strategy keeping up with all of these changes? Is your strategy agile? And then, of course, where is my organization from agility? You want to know where you are. How far are you from an acceptable level of agility? Now, there are 4 key elements here that I like to focus on. when it comes to enterprise agility, and that is you have to discover what you have. So define the business processes, the strategies. You have to audit. This means that you have to, collect the information that you have and then analyze it, and then of course synthesize these. That this means that whatever information you're collecting, you're putting it together and understanding what are the trends that are happening in the market, and then of course align and plan speaks for itself. This means that you put everything that you have collected in the discover, audit, and synthesize to put a proper plan for you in order to become an agile organization. All right. I hope this helps, because these four key steps are critical. It's part of an important process today, and I want you to keep that in mind. Now, with that being said, important to look at how can I work in the business and how can I work on the business. So working on the business means that on the business are issues that deal with the future shape of the enterprise in terms of its products, services, structure. And that's why, it is important that you're working on the business. While in the business are the issues that concentrate on operations. So on the business are the outcomes. In the business are the operations that produce these outcomes. So it's very important that you keep working on both sides. And this is important for you to remember. And I hope that you do that. So whenever you're doing an assessment of agility, look at the on, this means that the products that you produce, and look at the end, my operations and how they support things. All right. Now, we covered the first part of the presentation. Now I like to move into, the emergence of agility and resilience for effective leadership. And this is where my next questions comes to you. So are you ready? Here we go. Here comes my question. Effective change only focuses on altering mindsets. True or false? So I will open the survey for you, and I believe it is question number 2. And then I'm gonna ask you, so go ahead please. The answer is right in front of you. Effective change only focuses on altering mindsets. Let's see, what do you think? Is that true or false? Good job, well done, well done. All of you are responding, so I want to thank you for taking the time to respond here. That's much appreciated, guys. All right, we'll give everybody, 10 more seconds to make sure that everybody's participating. Okay. Now what we will do is we go ahead and end the voting. All right, and we will show you the results. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to share the results with you. Now, some of you said true, and some of you said false. Now, for those of you who said true, well, it's not only mindsets. It's not only mindsets. Change is a lot more than that. For those of you who said false, I want to congratulate you. Well done. It is false because it's not only working on mindsets. You have to do many things, okay? So I'm going to stop sharing the results so that I move on to the next set of slides, okay? And then I'm going to go into the remainder of the slides. So now here we go. So when it comes to change, we talk about adaptive organization. And an adaptive organization is willing to make the change. Look, willingness, readiness. They understand the urgency behind it, and they say, you know what, let's take a step toward change. It also identifies problems a lot quicker. They implement solutions rapidly. And so as you can see, agility and change, they go hand in hand. Now, the concept of agility did not come before change recently. It was all about change management, but many companies realized that you need to be agile in order to become, capable of changing things. So as you can see, you have to focus on innovation, trust, risk taking is rewarded, in many ways. Candidness, openness, you have to be foster open communication. So all of these things that are mentioned on this slide, they reflect an adaptive organization, and that is important. However, when we look in the next slide, individual prerequisites for change to occur, you have to have emotional and or motivational aspects. This means that what's in it for me? Why should I go ahead and change, right? And come to think of it, it's so true. Have you ever tried to change and the reason was outside of what you the area that you impact, normally you always ask, why should I change? What's in it for me? So this is very important, and this is the emotional part. And so when you are doing change, always ask, you should be able to respond to what's in it for me, because on the other side, the person that you're impacting, they're going to ask you the same question, and you should be able to convince them and be very persuasive. The second thing is the behavioral. This means that, what do I need to do now? So if we answer what's in it for me, what do I need to do differently now? How do I behave? How do I conduct myself? And then, of course, the last one is, why should I change? So if you put all these together, these are three tough questions that if you are working with change and working on an agile and resilient organization, you should be able to answer. Because as we said, agility covers lots of things, resilience covers lots of things. So first of all, you have to be able to answer the why. You should be able to answer the what in it for me, and how do I do things differently. So with that, we move into the next slide. Effective change means altering the mindset, and that's one part of the answer. So it's not only altering mindsets, it's also harnessing motivation and then shaping behavior. So I hope that I have managed to answer the questions that you, and just answered a couple of slides back. So effective change will take place if you are able to alter the mindsets. Once you do that, how to harness motivation. Motivation is an important part of change. And then, of course, shaping behavior, the future behavior that will foster innovation, agility, resilience, and all of these things. Now, we move on to the next slide where we cover stages of change management. And, some of the things that you will probably hear from the organization is how to come up to grips with the problem. So you have a problem of changing. How do I understand it? How do I see it? Do you resist? Do you complain? Do you find it easy to take on the change and adopt it? Or would you be successful in your journey toward accomplishing your change? The second thing is working through the change, and that's pretty much what I mentioned, is that, do you go through the different stages of change, and do you know where you are, and do you have the support mechanism that will help you with that journey that you take through the change? And then, of course, the third one is, can you reach a stage where you can sustain the new change that you have developed, the new image that you have developed? Because remember, let's say that you are a traditional company, you are a classic company, you are a brick and mortar, and you want to become more agile in your processes. Once you become more agile, can you maintain it? Can you sustain it? That's very critical, because I promise you, if you don't have the right mechanisms in place, you will always fall back to the old culture. That's where you started from. So you have to have the proper and the right strategy that will help you in building a sustainable future. Okay, that means that you have to ask some questions. And look how beautiful this is. When it comes to coming to grips with the problem, okay, the mindset is thinking and understanding. And this means that you have to break the conventional mindsets and generate a new picture of the future. As you can see, this is very important. And some of the questions that you might ask at this stage, for example, do people in my organization see the need for change? You might ask also, how uncomfortable are people with the status quo? The more uncomfortable they are, the need for them to change. For example, you might ask, do they have any sense of urgency? Remember, you won't move unless there's something quite urgent for you. When we look at the motivation, you're helping people deal with the loss, that they're losing something, but are you able to create the will for them to succeed as they move into a new future? And in this case, for example, when they are working through the change, some of the questions that you might be able to ask: are they struggling when they are doing the change? Are they looking for ways to make it work? And this is where you come in, and you should be able to support this change. Support is very, very important. And when it comes to behavior, attaining and sustaining the improvement is very important, because now you're changing the behavior and you could be changing competency and capabilities. So some of the questions that you would like to ask at this stage, which is attaining and sustaining improvement, are people communicating with others about the change? Are they asking questions? Are they getting answers to their problems? Are they looking for ways to leverage change or enhance it? And these are all important things that you want to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to when you do the change, the intention is to develop a high-performing organization. And as you can see, the elements of a high-performance organization that is agile, of course, is you look at the knowledge aspect of things. You have to look at the leadership itself, and I cannot stress the leadership, because leadership is the one that activates many of these things. And then, of course, are we innovative? Are we supporting innovation? Are we sponsoring innovation? And then information technology. How are you using this technology that we have today? Are you able to cope with all of these changes that we see today? So if you're seeking agility and resilience with the intention of become operationally excellent and agile, then you have to look at these four pillars. They are very, very important in order to achieve high performance. With that being said, it's very important that you look at the systems and the processes, because when you design an operational excellent organization, do we have the systems that will support us, and do we have the processes? And this should not be strange to you, because we talked about processes a couple of slides back, and that is looking at the end of the organization, the operations. Okay. Now, so results-based evaluation, this means that if you are looking at high performance organization, this means that we have to evaluate our results. And results-based evaluation means that you have to have proper assessments in place that will help you look at the relevance, efficiency, effectiveness, and the impact and sustainability of the new system that you're going into. If you're moving into a new culture, this culture has to be measured so that we know how we are moving, between these two new cultures. And this also means that we have to answer the why. Why did we change, and how we are monitoring it? We should be answered the how. What was the sequence or process that we led to our successful outcomes? We should be able to talk about compliance and accountability. Did the promised activities actually, become part of our plan? And then, of course, the process and implementation questions. Was the implementation process followed as anticipated? So it's heavy duty. One thing for sure is, I don't want to kid you and tell you it's easy. Becoming an agile and resilient organization is a a heavy thing, because change by itself is heavy. So I want you to remember that it's like any major project. It will take some time to happen. Sometimes it might be 6 months, sometimes it could be 24 months. And in some cases, believe it or not, it could be 5 to 10 years. In many cases, though, in light of all the changes and the technology and the fast things that are taking place around us, we see a much faster pace today. So hopefully it will be between the 6 months and the 24 months. So what are the results plan that we like to see? Well, once we have the plan in place, we want to make sure that the outcomes are coming out the right way. So it's very important that the new organization starts achieving their outcomes, the desired outcomes. And this means that, we have to identify the activities that has been assigned, and the responsibilities are working very well. And, whatever there is a shortcoming, we want to make sure that we fix it and move on from there. This also means that we need to translate the outcomes into action. This means that whatever you do in terms of activities, and this means could be the tasks that you're doing, okay, has to be well delivered and serviced very well. And as you can see here, the sum of these activities may or may not mean that you have achieved your outcomes. So that's why it's very important to ask a question: how will you know when you have been successful? And that's interesting part is this question was raised when I was in Saudi and working with the team on change and change management. Said, how do you know that you have changed successfully? And the same thing here is, how do we know that we have become agile and resilient as an organization? How do we know that we have achieved that success? One answer is the results speak for themselves. The second is, are people happy and content with the outcomes? Third is the customer satisfaction, are customer happy with the new face that you have for your company? So all of these are good indications, by the way. The second thing is, the fourth thing is, you compare yourself to competition. For example, are you better than the competition than before? This is very critical. Now, so because change is very demanding, conflict is going to happen. And this means that it's going to drain on your emotions, on the team, on the support team. So it's not the perfect conditions, but you can, if you are building the right capabilities, you will develop ability to handle conflict. So it's very important to be able to handle these conflicts, and this is why when you are changing, how to deal with the conflict is very, very important. Okay, now here comes the how do we generate confidence and action around agility and resilience, and as well as change, if you want. So I'm going to ask you a question here. So here comes the questions. Okay, as many as 34% of employees who quit a job cited a lack or limited appreciations for their contributions as a reason. True or false? Let's see here. So this is question number 3. I'm going to share it with you now. Okay, as many as 34% of employees who quit a job cited a lack or limited appreciations of their contributions as a reason. Okay, let's see. We have some responses already, and thank you for that. Okay, very good. Well done. Well done. Okay, we have some answers here, and we'll give everybody a few more seconds. I want to make sure that we finish on time. I don't want to, take away from, add to this special hour unnecessarily. So I want to make sure that we finish on time. All right. So I'll give everybody 5 more seconds. Okay. So here we go. So I'm going to end the voting now. I'm going to share with you the results. So for those of you who said true, I think that you answered the right thing, and I'm going to share with you some interesting statistics in the coming slides. For those who said false, well, wait until we show that slide, and you will realize that some of these statistics are critical for the success of organizations. So well done to all of you for answering. Let me go ahead and close this survey, and then now go back to the slide that we had. So here we go. Now, for example, how many of you would like to work in an organization where all the employees say, I love my job? I think this question is so critical. So I would like to ask you, those of you who are, with us on the call today, do you love your job? And I think all of us go through some stage in their life, whether you say, I'm okay with my job, I like my job, but some of you say, I love my job. I want you to love your job. And that's a completely different from I like my job, or, I'm okay with my job. Loving your job means that you are passionate about it. And if you have passion for your job, means that you do it very, very well. And this means that you are extremely, extremely successful at what you do. Okay? But here comes a reality check. So what percentage of your employees love their job? Do you know that? Is it okay to do just enough to get by? Well, some people say, yeah, it's okay. I don't want to exert more effort. But I tell you, some people will not quit until they do a fantastic job. Don't really care about the job. I mean, some people, they care, but there are people actually who don't care much. Now, one thing for sure is that I want you to care about your job, and I want you to love your job. And here are the statistics. Look at this. Current commitment and engagement level. People who say, I love my job, or they are highly engaged, are 29%. Those of you do just enough to get by and get paid are 54%. And those who are actively disengaged are 17%. So if I add 17% with those 54%, that's a big chunk of the organization. Because notice, I'm gonna be very honest with you. Doing just enough may not be enough for the organization, because the organization want to be successful. They want to compete. They want to grow. And doing just enough is not a good sign for success. So they cannot count on the 29% only. They have to count on more than 50 to 60%. So I like to ask you a question. how can you make sure that we are operating at a very high level of engagement and commitment? And to do that, you have to be very, very agile and responsive to the new environment that we live in. So, what is commitment? And how do we define morale? And how is commitment and morale defined? A commitment is kind of loyalty, devotion to your job, devotion to a cause, devotion to a relationship, devotion for a company. Morale is a mental and emotional condition of the individual or group with regard to a function or a task at hand, a sense of common purpose with respect to a group. So when we are doing agility and we're moving to an agile organization, we go through lots of change, and change tests our commitment. Why? Because we keep changing and evolving. Not too many people like that. So in the course of changing, you might end up losing your commitment, and your mental and emotional condition could be eroded. So how do we make sure that these two stay at a very high level when you are moving toward in a changing environment? That is why agility and resilience are very important today. So this takes us to the following slide. You need to be engaged. You need to make sure that you are mentally and emotionally invested. And in a nutshell, engaged employees bring all of themselves to work. They bring all of themselves, the 100% of who you are. And this is very important. Okay. And as you can see, there are several quotations here talking about engagement and its importance. Now, the business impact, okay, of employee engagement. Look at some statistics here. Those employees who are most committed perform 20% better and are 87% less likely to leave the organization. And that is why during the course to becoming an agile and resilient organization, it's very important that you maintain that high level of performance in the organization. Now, that being said, we look at the organizational DNA. And this means that we talk about culture, and culture is the sum of values, virtues, political environment, and behavioral norms. In short, how we do things. And are you able to develop a culture that is agile and resilient? Are you able to achieve such a culture? Because once you develop such a culture that is agile oriented or resilient oriented, you have a new set of values, your virtues have evolved, your political environment has changed to support such an environment, and most importantly is your behavior has also changed. Now, that with that, we ask the following thing, or we cover the following things. There is a direct link between culture and the employee engagement. As culture evolves, employees become more engaged and they perform at a high level. And the culture that supports engagement will help employees understand what engagement is, and they will perform at a much higher level. Okay? This means also that how do we motivate these employees to maintain those high level of performances that we see in them? One is motivation. You have to understand that motivation is the fuel, the fire that keeps people going. And then, of course, this comes from Dr. Stephen Covey, And then the other part is motivation is a function of growth from getting intrinsic rewards out to interesting and challenging work, as well as is based on the growth needs of the individual. So it is an internal engine. And this comes from Frederick Hirschberg. Both of these, writers and authors are well established in the world of human resources and teamwork and organizational and leadership topics. So this is where I have answered your concern. Remember, I asked you how many people are there who are feeling that they are not being appreciated, and this is the answer. As many as 34% of employees, they quit the job because they feel that lack of appreciation because of lack of appreciation in their workplace. And so that's why we talked about motivation. You have to make sure that you motivate people, because at the end of the day, you want to see people happy, engaged, and you have to find a way to personalize relationships between the organization and the employee, because it's such a powerful thing to have such a relationship in the workplace. And when we are going through agile and a resilient organization, things have to become more personal, and you have to accommodate your culture and your organization and the process and the system to make sure that you are supporting such an agile environment. This means that you have to work on the following. First of all, Instead of only correcting and doing little praising, you have to increase the amount of praise and maintain the same amount of correction. So you have to make sure that you are praising people more, giving them more feedback, because becoming an agile and resilient organization is quite demanding. So people need to understand where they are, how far are they from becoming agile, has their behavior changed. All of these things are very critical, ladies and gentlemen. So how much time does senior management spend personally developing and maintaining a corporate culture is an important question that we need to start asking. And this is where leadership comes in. This means that if we are to develop a resilient and agile organization, we have to look at the dynamics and how they are changing. We have to understand that leadership in the workplace is playing a much more important role than before, because leadership is about motivation, is about change, is about all of these important aspects. And of course, if we need to develop a resilient organization, we want to make sure that resist moving toward the negatives and make sure that we keep moving toward the positives. Um, so a little bit on resilience. We covered agility to some extent. It's very important to understand resilience here. The resilience is relationship between the personality and the demands of the job. And how do I feel about myself? How do I feel about my job? And then, there's a very interesting formula here. How do you cope, okay, with your job? And notice that coping does not equal less work. It doesn't. Coping does not equal less work. Coping means that how do you deal with the responsibility that you have in front of you? So, and this is where leadership empowerment, and self-efficacy and resilience and capacity become an important formula in the organization. With that being said, the imperative of change becomes more and more powerful, and the need for innovation becomes an integral part of the organization. You have to abandon some of the old policies and practices when it comes to how do we support ideas and how do we make innovation an important part of the organization. And this means that we have to look at change in the practice of the leadership to support a new environment that is more innovative and more agile and more resilient. I kept this slide on purpose because there's a very nice journey here. Look at that. First of all, we talk about the well-being, and the well-being results in happiness. Happiness means self-worth. Self-worth means self-efficacy. Self-efficacy means motivation, self-actualization, professional empowerment, control, collegiality. Collegiality means that you're able to collaborate with others, enhance capacity, and then resilience. So as you can see, when we are trying to develop resilience in the organization, you have to look at it from different aspects. And that is why sometimes it takes a bit of time and a more in-depth approach than just a traditional approach that we kind of used to. And this takes us to 4 key areas that are foundational assumptions that you have to keep your mind on. Is make sure that we focus on the human strengths, make sure that we are able to develop people who are able to deal with change, able to explain the styles that will develop a resilient mindset, and of course, develop the right thinking in people who want to adopt this style of thinking. This takes us to unleashing and to how do we unleash our thinking? How do we think differently? How do we innovate? And here, I like to ask you a question. So here comes the question. Innovation is the creation, use, and dissemination of better processes, products, services, or technology. True or false? So here comes the survey. It's question number 4. So I'm going to put this question over here. Innovation is the creation, use, and dissemination of better processes, products, and services, or technologies. Let's see. Well done. For those of you who have answered, I want to thank you. And we give everybody a chance. Okay. We'll give 5 more seconds. We're coming very close to the top of the hour, and I just want to make sure that I don't occupy any more time of this. All right, so well done. So some people looks like they have changed their answer. So I'm going to end the voting now. I'm going to share the results with you. Okay, so here you go. So all of you answered true, and well done. I'm very proud of you. So well done to all of you. I'm going to now close the screen. I'm going to go back to the slide, and move on to the next slide. So notice this. Innovation is the creation, use, and dissemination of better processes, products, services, or technology. So I'm very proud of you. You answered it correctly. Uh, this takes us to the following. Who should be participating in innovation? Because we're thinking differently now. Well, everybody should. Innovation is not something, a privilege to a group of people. Innovation could come from anywhere in the organization. And that means involvement. So our strategy should involve. And that is why an agile and resilient organization involves everybody. And that's why so many companies have difficulty with that, because traditional companies don't involve employees as much, but agile and resilient organization, they involve employees. Okay, so this means that we have to make sure that we contribute our know-how, we have to contribute our efforts, and make sure that we are contributing to the vision of the company. And this also translates to incremental innovation. What does it mean? Let's say that you give me an idea, I build on that idea, and then we take it from there and we make a bigger idea. So this means that the incremental innovation, this is something that we keep improving on things. But the interesting part is some of you could be coming up with something, a radical innovation, something that we never did before. We do things completely differently, and that means radical innovation. And to be agile and resilient, you have to take both approaches into consideration. You have to do incremental innovation, and you have to consider the impact and the possibility of facing or generating some radical innovation in the workplace. Now, what stifles innovation? Many things stop in the way of innovation. Could be the environmental that you're living in. Sometimes the restrictive relationships in the workplace. Sometimes could be the approach. People only communicate in one way, one direction. Could be the tools that you have. Could be the vehicles for change. They are not going very well. Could be innovation is not focused. So instead of telling people the direction of what we like to do, people are all over the place, and this means that sometimes there's no focus when it comes to innovation, and I call it in other ways wasted energy. Okay, and then of course could be the culture. You feel that you're always number 4 or 5. You said, you know what, we should accept our position here. There will always be other companies better than us, and this is, I call it, the defeatist mentality. So please don't be like that. Always try to innovate, always try to be different. Now, that takes me to the last module, and that is talk about social organizations and the importance of social organizations today, and sharing information and developing the new style of leadership for the future. So here comes my last question to you. Leaders are born, not made. True or false? So now I'm going to share with you this question. Let me see how you answer that question. Leaders are born, not made. I love your response. I see that you responded very, very well. I want to thank you. At least it tells me, as a webinar presenter today, that you're still focused, and that's a very good sign for me. So thank you for, staying with me on this call. I appreciate it tremendously. Now I'm gonna start, ending the vote here, and then I'm gonna share with you the answer. So I'm ending the vote. I'm gonna share the results with you. So here's the results. All of you said false. Well done. Well done. I'm very proud of you. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna close the screen. I'm gonna go to the last set of slides so that we can start closing now. So here we go. One of the key things is that today new skills are coming up. Notice how skills of leadership are changing. One of them is, are you able to exploit your inner drive to build and grow things? Okay, not maintain. So are you able to develop and grow things? Maintaining used to be in the past, it was very much managerial. It doesn't mean that management today still has to maintain. No, even managers and management today are being asked to become, to exploit their inner drive, build and grow as well. The second thing, clarity. Are you able to see through the mess? Because in reality, look where we go today, where we live today. We have so much information out there, so much information. It's not even funny that, can you see through all of this messiness of information, the contradictions that we see? I think that many of you live through this on a daily basis. You don't know who to believe sometimes. So, can you get clarity? That is an important aspect or a skill that you need to develop today. Then, another one that I like to share with you is dilemma flipping. Are you able to turn dilemmas to become advantages for you? The other one is immersive learning agility, ability. Remember, learning agility. That's what I talked about in the first few slides. Are you able to learn something new? Are you able to explore unfamiliar environments? That's top, very powerful. Number five is bioempathy. Are you able to see things from a different point of view? And number six is, are you able to calm tense situations? This means that are you able to deal with conflicts? And we talked about conflict in a few slides back. And then, of course, number eight for me is quiet transparency. Are you able to be open and authentic about what matters to you? And rapid prototyping. Are you able to create very quickly, develop things very fast? That's agility, huh? And then, of course, the last two are smart mob organizing. Are you able to engage with people and nurture purposeful meetings and social networks? And then the last one, of course, are you able to seed, nurture, and grow shared assets? This means that commons creating, this means sharing information. And as you can see, this is very, very powerful. So these 10 characteristics did not exist before as much, maybe, or people did not pay attention to them, but today are becoming very important. Why? I think that social media has made these characteristics, come out very, very fast. So people today, in light of the social media, are discovering that if you really would like to succeed today, you need to leverage social media. But this means that you have to develop new skills. And this world of social media is very, very rich. And as you can see, this is just a simple example. And since we put this slide till today, I am sure there are more and more platforms of social media that has come out. But stick to the true and tested, and every now and then try something new. Social media is important, but I also caution you to be careful of the messes that sometimes are created because of that. Social networking is important. Develop the networks on the social network, but be careful who you are networking with. Check the backgrounds. This is very important. It helps with agility. It helps with resilience. It helps with innovation, and sharing of information. And of course, this helps in developing relationships and sharing and building a sense of community, which is very important today. Despite all the social networking, sometimes we feel isolated, and this translates to the workplace. So how do we make sure that we are not isolated in the workplace? Because isolation works against agility and resilience. And then, of course, we have the collaborative approach, action-oriented, real-world problem-solving environment that we live in. So keep that in mind as you move on. Now, the last couple of slides. Who are the resilient people? Are people who look for opportunities, not problems. They have a positive attitude. They fight the victim mentality. They overcome difficulties. They learn from their mistakes. And the main thing for me is make sure that you have the right skills from hardness skills. This means that you don't buckle down under the pressure of work. You have a healthy psychological mindset, and of course you are able to cope with the different skills and resources that are being demanded from us today. My word of advice is don't give up easy. Always make sure that you adapt to the stress that we are surrounded with, and always maintain a good health, because it's very important that this is critical in the workplace where employee involvement is on the rise, work-life balance is becoming very critical, your growth is becoming more and more important, but you have to maintain a healthy and safe environment. And this means that you also have to recognize employees in the workplace. My last slide is basically build an appropriate resilience strategy. You have to look at accepting the risk, but mitigating the risk, and also transferring the risk in many ways. This is, ladies and gentlemen, my last slide. I want to thank you. Sorry for going over time. My sincerest apologies. I hope that you enjoyed the webinar. If you like to have a copy, my email is right over here. Okay. This is our website. Make sure that you visit it. If you're interested in joining my network, I'm on LinkedIn. Uh, the my schedule where we cover agility and resilience these are some of the courses where agility and resilience are covered very well. Transformational change and strategic leadership talks about agility and resilience. Managerial decision making and problem solving, managing up, down, and across, certified professional manager, managing multiple task priorities and deadlines, developing and implementing the business plan. Some locations are wonderful locations. Some of them are in Dubai. Some of them are in Beirut. Even in Saudi Arabia, we're running a couple of courses in the next couple of months. So if you like to join us there, do so. And we always run them in 5-star hotels. So we always look at your comfort. With that being said, stay healthy. And if you need a copy of the presentation, send me an email. I will send it to you. And I want to thank you very much for your participation today. Well done on answering all the questions, and I hope to see you on future webinars. For now, I'm going to sign off and take care of yourself, and all the very best.
Meirc.com